All right, let's get right into it, shall we? Today, we're going to dive into the world of international trade and government revenue.
Sounds intriguing.
Specifically, we're going to be talking about President Trump's proposed External Revenue Service.
The ERS?
Yeah, the ERS. You know, an agency dedicated to collecting tariffs, duties, all those funds tied to foreign trade.
It's an interesting concept, especially given all the ongoing discussions about tariffs and how they impact the economy.
Absolutely. And before we get too deep into it all, if you're liking what you're hearing so far, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any future episodes.
Yeah, please do.
So where do things stand with the ERS? I mean, it's been a while since we've heard much about it.
Well, it seems like it's still in its early stages.
Yeah.
I mean, President Trump initially planned to establish the ERS right from the get-go.
Like right out of the gate.
Yeah, on day one of his presidency, but things haven't quite gone according to plan.
Right. And the American First Trade Policy memo, you know, it actually indicates that the current focus is on conducting a feasibility study.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to figure out if setting up this whole new agency is even practical.
That makes sense.
Great.
Exactly. And, you know, to add another layer of complexity to this is Senator Bernie Moreno's proposed bill.
Oh, yeah.
He suggests that the ERS be funded by redirecting funds originally allocated for the IRS.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some activity surrounding the ERS, but there's also a lot of uncertainty.
Absolutely.
There's no guarantee that it'll actually, you know, come to fruition.
Right.
Now, I know there's been a lot of buzz online about the ERS potentially replacing income tax.
Oh, yeah.
You know, some people are worried, some are excited. What's the reality here?
Well, let's clear the air on that one.
Yeah.
The idea of the ERS replacing income tax, that's just a misconception. President Trump never actually explicitly stated that as a goal, and frankly, the numbers just don't support it.
Okay, so let's break down those numbers.
Right.
How much does the government actually bring in from tariffs right now?
Currently, tariffs only make up a tiny sliver of government revenue, like about 1.8%.
Wow.
It's practically a rounding error compared to, you know, the massive amounts generated by income tax and Social Security and Medicare taxes.
So even with, you know, a hypothetical 100% tariff on all imports,
Right.
it wouldn't come close to covering the government's expenses.
Not even remotely close.
Wow.
To put it into perspective, the government spends roughly $20 billion every single day.
Every day?
Every day. Now, the projected annual income from tariffs under Trump's policies was around $20 billion.
Okay.
That's one day's worth of spending versus an entire year's worth of tariff revenue.
Wow. That's a pretty eye-opening comparison.
Yeah.
It really puts things into perspective. What do you think is driving this misconception about the ERS replacing income tax? You think it's just wishful thinking on some people's part, or is there more to it?
It's hard to say for sure, but I think it might be a combination of factors.
Okay.
Perhaps some people are misinterpreting certain statements or latching on to snippets of information without fully understanding, you know, the broader context.
Right. It's understandable that people might jump to conclusions, especially when it comes to something as, you know, significant as taxes.
Sure.
But it's crucial to have all the facts before, you know, forming an opinion.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've established that the ERS isn't about wiping out income tax.
Right.
But is it even a good idea in the first place?
Well, that's where things get a little more complex.
Go.
To evaluate the ERS fairly, we need to shift our focus away from debating, you know, tariffs themselves and look specifically at the concept of creating this new agency.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So what are some of the potential, you know, pros and cons of the ERS?
Well, on the one hand, proponents argue that a dedicated agency could potentially streamline tariff collection and make the process more efficient.
Got it.
They suggest that it could lead to increased revenue and better enforcement of trade regulations.
Okay.
However, there are also some valid concerns.
Like what?
Well, critics point out that creating a brand new agency inevitably expands the government, which often leads to inefficiency and wasted resources,
Right.
both time and money.
Right. And let's not forget, we already have the Customs and Border Protection Agency.
CBP.
Yeah, CBP handling tariff collection.
Exactly.
So the question becomes, do we really need a whole new agency to do a job that's already being done? Couldn't those resources be better utilized elsewhere? Perhaps by improving or upgrading the existing CBP infrastructure.
That's a really good point.
Right.
Yeah, it's a valid point. It's always a balancing act when it comes to government agencies, right?
Right.
You wanna make sure you're not creating, unnecessary bureaucracy, but you also want to ensure that important functions are handled effectively.
Right, and it's not just about efficiency, right? Some critics also worry that creating a separate agency focused solely on tariffs could send the wrong signal to our trading partners.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, some argue that it could be interpreted as a more, protectionist stance, potentially leading to increased trade tensions or even retaliation.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
It's almost like creating a dedicated agency for tariffs could be seen as emphasizing that aspect of trade policy,
right,
rather than focusing on collaboration and open markets.
Right, and that could have ripple effects throughout the global economy.
Oh, absolutely.
After all, we live in an interconnected world, and changes in one country's trade policies can impact others.
Absolutely. It's a complex web of relationships, and any significant shifts in trade policy need to be carefully considered.
Right. So it seems like the ERS proposal raises a lot of important questions. What stands out to you as the most crucial aspect of this whole discussion?
I think the key takeaway here is that the ERS isn't just about collecting tariffs.
Right.
It's about the broader implications for, government efficiency, trade relations, and the overall economy.
Right. I agree. And it's crucial for us as, informed citizens to engage in these discussions and critically evaluate the potential consequences of such proposals.
Well said. And I think it's also important to remember that the ERS is just one piece of a much larger puzzle.
What do you mean?
Well, we've been focusing specifically on, this proposed agency, but it's crucial to consider it within the broader context of, trade policy as a whole.
Right.
For example, how does the ERS fit into the ongoing debates about tariffs, trade agreements, and the global balance of power?
Right. That's a great point. It's easy to get caught up in the specifics of a single proposal.
Yeah.
But it's essential to, zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
Absolutely.
How do you think this whole ERS discussion might impact the future of trade policy, both domestically and internationally?
Well, it's hard to say for sure, but it certainly highlights the ongoing tensions and debates surrounding trade.
Right.
On the one hand, you have those who advocate for more protectionist measures, arguing that we need to safeguard domestic industries and jobs.
Right.
On the other hand, you have those who champion free trade, believing that it ultimately leads to greater economic prosperity for all.
And where do you see the ERS fitting into that spectrum?
I think it depends on how it's ultimately implemented, if it is indeed created.
Right.
If the focus is solely on maximizing tariff revenue, it could be perceived as a more protectionist move.
Okay.
However, if it's structured in a way that promotes fairness and transparency in trade,
it could potentially contribute to a more balanced and stable global trading system.
It seems like the devil is in the details, as they say. The success or failure of the ERS will likely hinge on the specifics of its implementation.
Absolutely.
And how it's perceived by the global community.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I'd like to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about the ERS potentially sending a signal to our trading partners.
Right.
What kind of signal do you think it sends, and how might other countries react?
That's a complex question. And there's no easy answer.
Right.
It really depends on the specific actions and policies of the ERS, as well as the overall context of global trade relations.
Okay.
However, I think it's safe to say that the creation of a dedicated tariff collecting agency could be viewed with some suspicion by certain countries,
right,
particularly those who advocate for freer trade.
Do you think it could potentially lead to retaliatory measures or even trade wars? It's certainly a possibility, but it's not inevitable.
Okay.
A lot would depend on the diplomatic skills and strategic decisions of those involved.
Right.
If the ERS is perceived as a purely protectionist measure, it could escalate tensions and lead to a more adversarial trading environment.
Right.
However, if it's implemented in a way that promotes fairness and transparency, it could potentially foster greater cooperation and stability.
So it seems like the ERS has the potential to be both a catalyst for conflict and a tool for cooperation, depending on how it's approached.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that trade policy is a powerful instrument, and it can be used for both good and bad. The choices we make in this arena have far-reaching consequences, both for ourselves and for the global community.
And those choices will continue to be debated and contested as we navigate the complex world of international trade.
Absolutely. Trade is a dynamic and ever-evolving field, and we need to be prepared to adapt and respond to new challenges and opportunities.
Yeah, it really does sound like the creation of the ERS could be a pivotal moment in trade policy, with the potential to reshape global trade relations in significant ways.
I think that's a fair assessment. It's a bold move that carries both risks and opportunities, and ultimately its success or failure will depend on a multitude of factors, including the political climate, economic conditions, and the strategic decisions made by both domestic and international players.
It's a lot to think about. And it'll be interesting to see how things unfold.
Absolutely.
What do you think is the most important thing for our listeners to keep in mind as they follow this developing story?
Well, I think it's crucial to stay informed, to critically evaluate the information coming from various sources, and to engage in thoughtful discussions about the implications of the ERS and trade policy in general.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And as we learn more about the ERS and its potential impact, we'll be sure to keep you updated.
Absolutely.
If you're enjoying this conversation and finding it valuable, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future episodes where we'll continue to delve into the complexities of trade, economics, and global affairs.
Please do.
And it's been a pleasure discussing this with you today.
Likewise.
It's always fascinating to unpack these complex issues and explore the different perspectives at play.
Absolutely.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this exploration of the ERS.
Thank you.
Don't forget to leave a like if you found this conversation insightful, and be sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the topics shaping our world.
Great talking with you.
Thanks for listening.